Hello and welcome to another sealed deck building exercise. Today we're gonna take a look at the new Fate Reforged set, and I'm gonna build a sealed deck with 3 Fate Reforged boosters and 3 Khans of Tarkir boosters, since that is what you would open at a sealed event if you go right now. So let's jump right into it, and I guess we'll start with the Khans of Tarkir boosters, just to keep the suspense for the new cards. And I want to make sure to thank Bryce Nelson for sending me these Khans of Tarkir boosters yet again, which is very nice of him. Alright, God, I'm butchering this. Alright, what we got there? First card, Weave Fate. And I'll sort all the cards by color as usual. Bloodfire Expert. Smite the Monstrous. Sidisi Spat. Awaken the Bear. Let's sort these in the appropriate order. There we go. Get us some Wooburg action down here. Then we have a Snowhorn Rider. Act of Treason. Windscarred Crag, always nice to see the dual lands. Kill Shot, nice removal spell. Temur Banner. Chief of the Scale. Icefeather Aven. Despise, and our rare is a Howl of the Horde. Alright. And a bear token. Let's move on to the second Khans booster. So far, colors look pretty even. The multicolored cards are pointing towards Temur, but could easily still change. So in our second pack we open a Trumpet Blast, Saltroad Patrol, Disdainful Stroke, Canyon Lurkers, Debilitating Injury, another good removal spell, Smoke Teller, Unyielding Krumar, Highland Game, a Tranquil Cove, Rakshasa's Secret, Swarm of Bloodflies, Death Frenzy, a nice sweeper, Nomad Outpost, and our rare is a June Blast. This is one of the best, if not the best, rares you can open in Khans of Tarkir. It is 3 colors, but it's gonna win some games that not many cards can win. So definitely trying to play that one. Let's move over to the third Khans pack, where we have a Defiant Strike, Skultkin, Kintree Warden, Rotting Mastodon, Bloodfire Mentor, Scoured Barrens, Jeskai Student, an Abzan Banner, Embodiment of Spring, Dismal Backwater, Brave the Sands, Bellowing Saddlebrute, another Despise, And our rare is a mythic rare, Empty the Pits, which can be very good in the right deck, but the 4 black mana symbols can be a problem. Alright, sweet. So I'm definitely excited to try out black and maybe Abzan to play the Doomblast, but we have a lot of fixing so far, so we could even end up playing 3 or 4 colors. Alright, first Fate Reforged booster. Where we open Arashing Cleric, Rakshasa's Disdain, a Reach of Shadows, solid removal spell, Right into Being, Alasha's Vanguard, Smoldering Afreet, Defiant Ogre, Grim Contest, Return to the Earth, Mindscour Dragon, Humble Defector, Dark Deal, and our rare Archfiend of Depravity, another excellent rare, which I would be very happy to play. And we also get a Dismal Backwater and a foil Tranquil Cove. So we get a lot of fixing here. Don't know if you can catch the shininess. And the warrior token from the Mardu Strike Leader, I think. Alright, so not bad. We got some more good black cards. But again, a lot of fixing, so not sure what the other colors will end up being. Second Fate Reforged booster and 5th booster overall. We open a Dragon Bell Monk, Aven Surveyor, another very good blue common, Sultai Emissary, seems to overperform a lot, Hooded Assassin, not a bad common, same with Gurmag Angler. If you don't have many Delph cards, this is a very good one. A Goreswine to get your Ferocious going. Archers of Corsi, Goblin Heel Cutter, very good in an aggressive deck. Oh. Frontier Mastodon, Pressure Point, Battlefront Cruciok, Rage Form, last uncommon Fearsome Awakening, and our rare is a Yasova Dragonclaw, which is certainly very good. Gets a lot better if you can use her ability. And a Windscarred Crag to go with our other lands. Alright, on to the final booster. Where we open Aven Skirmisher, Lotus Path Jin, Sultai Runemark, Whiskaway, Tessiger's Cruelty, Hunt the Weak, Fierce Invocation, Harsh Sustenance, Temur Rune Mark, Sandblast, another good removal spell, Fruit of the First Tree. I would not really recommend playing this one. And Channel Harm, on the other hand, can be very, very good. Our last uncommon is a Cloud Form. And our rare is Rally the Ancestors. This one's not that exciting, unfortunately. And we get another Rugged Highlands and a Spirit Token. Alright, so if you take a look at our mana base here, we have a lot of dual lands, so hopefully we can make those do a lot of work. So now what I like to do is just go over every color and separate the playables from the unplayables, so we get a better idea where our good colors are and what our main colors will be. So let's start with white. Rally the Ancestors, not very good. Channel Harm, good. Sandblast, also good. Skirmisher, not so good. Pressure Point is fine. Dragonbell Monk is also playable. The Cleric, not that great, but could make a deck could make your sideboard if you're playing against an aggressive deck. I could see siding this in, but otherwise I would avoid it. Brave the Sands can be nice with Outlast, but I don't think we picked many up. Otherwise I would avoid it. Jeskai Student is not that exciting. Can be better in draft if you build a more focused deck, but I think in sealed I would avoid this one. Defiant Strike has not a super high upside, but the downside is basically non-existent, so usually your last card, but nice at triggering prowess, so I'll keep it in the playable pile. Salt Road Patrol, also playable but not exciting. Killshot, on the other hand, I would be very happy to play. And Smite the Monstrous, the first copy will usually make the deck, as it's a nice way to answer bombs that the opponent might have opened. So in white, if we take a look, we have 3 good removal spells, or 4 good removal spells if you count Channel Harm. The creatures are not that exciting, so white looks to be a support color that we can use as a splash to get some more removal in our deck. But I would not main the white cards, since there simply aren't enough creatures. So white could make the deck if we need the white splash or the removal. Let's go over to blue, where Cloud Form is very good. Whisk Away is very solid. Lotus Path Djinn is very good as well. Even Surveyor's excellent. Mindscour Dragon is certainly playable. Right Into Being is also very good. Rakshasa's Disdain, on the other hand, I would avoid. Embodiment of Spring can make the deck if your main colors are blue and green, for example, and you're splashing a third color, but usually he's not gonna make it, so I'll put him on the side for now. If we end up in blue and green, I'll reconsider him. Skullkin is fine, but certainly not exciting. 4 mana for a 2/2 flyer that you have to sacrifice to deal damage is not that great, but if you need some creatures that can also be removal, then I guess he'll do it. Disdainful Stroke can be very good against aggressive decks. This should be sided out right away. And then We Fate, a nice card advantage card, but you can't have too many of those in your deck, because otherwise you will just die to a bunch of 2-drops. So I'll keep it in the playable pile, but certainly not playing it in any deck. So if we take a look at blue overall, we don't have a ton of creatures, a couple. So blue is not super deep, but blue cards are pretty good, but they also are double blue in the costs, like Cloudform and Aven Surveyor. So blue likely wants to be one of our main colors, and I don't quite think blue is deep enough to do that, but I'll certainly keep it in mind if we don't find any other main colors. Alright, let's move on to black, which looks very deep from the amount of cards, but let's see if they are playable or not. Tassigur's Cruelty can be playable, but I would more likely put it in the sideboard and side it in against very slow, grindy decks, where the discard is basically card advantage, but otherwise I would not really main deck it. Sultai Runemark, most of the Runemarks aren't very good. The blue one, the Jeskai one, is actually decent, but I would avoid most of them, since good decks will be able to 2-for-1 you very easily. So Runemark on the side. Fearsome Awakening is not that great. If you have one or two very strong creatures that you want to get back from the graveyard, then I guess this will do, but otherwise I would avoid it. Gormag Angler, on the other hand, is very, very good. Hooded Assassin is also a solid playable. Same with the Sultai Emissary. Archfiend is obviously very good. Dark Deal is not the kind of card you want in sealed, perhaps for some combo deck in constructed. Alash's Vanguard is not that great. A 3/3 for 4 is not very good, and a dashed 3/3 is not that exciting, as I don't think will be an aggressive deck. So I'll put it on the side, but if we need more playables or more creatures, then I guess we could take a second look. Reach of Shadows is a very solid removal spell, so happy to have it. Empty the Pits is certainly good if you're heavy black and if you don't have other many Delve cards. So I'll put it in the playable pile, but certainly not going in any deck. Despise is interesting, as most 1-mana discard spells. They're pretty situational. They can be super good, especially if you manage to take away one of your opponent's best cards. But I would not run more than one in our deck. So I'll put it in the playable pile. Bellowing Saddlebrute is very, very good. A 4/5 for 4 that sometimes will lose you some life is still very good and will hold the ground. A Rotting Mastodon is a card that can enable a lot of those Toughness Matters cards. A 2/8 for 5 is not that exciting, but if you have a couple of those Toughness Matters cards, then the Rotting Mastodon gets a lot better. So I'll put it in the playable pile, but certainly not gonna run it in any deck. Swarm of Bloodflies is decent. A flyer that can become bigger when something dies is pretty good, especially if you have a lot of removal. So certainly playable, but requires some help. Rakshasa's Secret is also an interesting card. It's basically a Mind Rot your opponent discards to, and you also fuel your graveyard a bit for those Delve cards. So it can be a nice sort of way to gain card advantage over the opponent. And if they don't expect it and don't keep some lands in hand in the late game, you can certainly get them. So I would say the Secret is playable, but if you have better cards that are more proactive, then I would probably play those instead. Unyielding Krumar is a 3/3 for 4 with a small upside, so definitely better than the dash card we took a look at earlier, but still not super exciting. Debilitating Injury, on the other hand, is very, very good. Happy to have it. And the second Despise I will probably not end up playing, even though it fuels Delve, but it's such a horrible top deck if you're both top decking that I don't really want to have more than one. And then Sidisi's Pet is a morph. Most morphs are playable, and this one is playable as well. Not that exciting, but certainly playable. So if we take a look at black, we have a couple of decent removal spells, a couple of very good creatures. Overall, black seems pretty balanced and pretty deep, so can easily be our main color, and I would be pretty happy to play it. Alright, let's move on to red, where we have a Fierce Invocation, which is not bad, but not that great either. A 4/4 for 5 that can sometimes be a bit better. It's still not that great, but certainly playable. Now Rage Form is also interesting. A 2/2 first striker, not as good as a 2/2 lifelinker with flying, or a 2/2 flying with hexproof. But Rage Form, I guess if you have a way to pump it up to take advantage of the double strike, can be good, but I would probably avoid playing it in the first place. So let's put it on the side. Goblin Heel Cutter, very good in an aggressive deck, but I don't think we really have the cards to support it, but either way, certainly playable. Gore Swine, also playable. Does trade down with most 2-drops, but it does enable those Temur cards with Ferocious, and can sometimes trade up if you're the aggressor. Humble Defector is an interesting combo card. If you have a way to sacrifice him before you have to give him to the opponent, he gets a lot better. I don't think we have many of those combo cards, but I'll keep it in mind, so I'll put it in the playable pile for now, but certainly warrants a second look. Defiant Ogre is not that exciting. It's more a sideboard card if your opponent has a broken artifact. Smoldering Efreet is a 2-drop, but not a very exciting one, as it deals 2 damage when it dies to you. But if you need 2-drops, I guess he'll do. Bloodfire Mentor can be nice in a slower deck that wants the card selection, and certainly holds the ground nicely, so certainly playable. Canyon Lurkers is one of the weaker morphs, I think, just because it will trade down most of the time with only having 2 toughness. But if you need creatures, and need creatures that deal a lot of damage out of nowhere, then the Lurkers can be your guy. Trumpet Blast is a kind of card that goes into more of a token aggressive deck that tries to swarm the opponent, and I don't think we have any token generators, so usually this would be playable in the right aggressive deck, but given our pool, I think it's out of the question. Howl of the Horde can be nice. It can copy a spell and with raid copy it once again, but it does require a lot of mana if you want to play a good spell and copy it as well. So most of the time I would avoid playing this unless you have a very good reason to. Act of Treason, good in the aggressive deck, but given our pool I don't think we have that deck, so in that case I would avoid it, otherwise it could be good. And Bloodfire Expert I would avoid as well, just because it trades down most of the time. Alright, so red, not looking too good. Yeah, just pretty unplayable actually. A couple of creatures, no removal, no nothing. So I think red can be pretty easily put aside here. We might get back to it later. Alright, so let's take a look at green. Fruit of the First Tree I would avoid. The opponents can easily play around it, or bounce your creature and then you will be very sad. Temur Rune Mark is not the kind of rune mark I really want. Hunt a Weak can be good. Does require some big creatures to kill the opponent's creatures, but removal is removal. Yasova is decent as well. Battlefront Khrushchev is not very exciting, so I would avoid playing him if you really need some way to get damage through. If you don't have any flyers, for example, I could see playing this, but otherwise I would avoid it. Frontier Mastodon is a solid 3-drop that can be very big for a 3-drop, but even a 3/2 is fine. Archers of Karsi I would avoid. A 5/2 defender with reach is not the kind of card you want. If it were a 2/5 it might have been better, but as a 5/2 it just trades with too many cheap cards. Return to Earth is a perfectly reasonable sideboard card, but I would not really main deck it, even though it's very versatile. Kintry Warden is also interesting. He seems to overperform a lot. You can just morph him, and later in the game you can have a regenerating blocker. So in board stalls can be very good if your opponent has a big creature that doesn't have flying or trample. So I would say it's playable. Highland Game, just a 2-drop that does what it does. It trades with morphs, attacks for 2 a bunch, and then eventually dies and gains you 2 life. So if you need 2-drops, it's pretty good. Same goes with Smoke Teller. You won't be activating him all that much, but just a 2/2 for 2 is usually good enough. And Awaken the Bear is a fine combat trick. +3 and trample is pretty good, so certainly playable. Taking a look at green, it's not very deep. It doesn't really have many removal spells, just a Hunt the Weak and a Awaken the Bear as combat tricks. So yeah, green not looking too exciting, unfortunately. Perhaps the multicolor cards can persuade us into green. So let's take a look at our artifacts. We have a Temur banner and an Abzan banner. I'm especially taking a look at the Abzan banner, which can help us cast a Doom Blast a turn sooner and just helps fix our mana if we need it. So the banners I think got a little better now with Fate Reforged, just because you don't have as many morphs that you want to play on turn 3. Move over to the multicolor cards. Harsh Sustenance is very good, especially if you have a lot of tokens. I don't think we have that, but it's still fine even if you just have a normal curve. If it deals 2 or 3 damage, you're gonna be happy. Grim Contest, very good in the right deck if you have a lot of toughness. So with the Rotting Mastodon, for example, can be very good. And even if you just have an average green deck with big creatures, it's still gonna be good enough. Doomblast, certainly very good. Death Frenzy, also pretty nice. Does require some setup, but usually ends up paying off. Ice Feather Aven, very good. You can usually morph him and then unmorph him to gain a lot of tempo advantage, but even if you have a lot of later plays, just playing him as a 2/2 flyer on turn 2 can get in a lot of damage. And then Chief of the Scale, I don't think we have a lot of warriors, but just a 2/3 for 2 mana if you have a good mana base is decent. And Snowhorn Rider is also an excellent morph. So, taking a look at the multicolor cards, Abzan seems like the color we want to be, as we have Doomblast, Grim Contest, Harsh Sustenance, Death Frenzy, and even a Chief of the Scale. Temur offers an Aven and a Rider, which isn't bad, but given that our red and our blue aren't that exciting and our green isn't even that exciting, I think Temur is not really what we want to be doing. So we'd rather stick to the Abzan first, and so we'll try and build an Abzan deck, and then maybe we can take a look at Temur later to compare the two. So now let's take a look at our mana base here. We have, let's see, this would be Temur, this would be none, this doesn't go in any of the two, this doesn't either. This would go in Abzan, this would go in Abzan. So unfortunately most of our lands are more for Jeskai and Sultai. So maybe we can splash some blue cards if we end up going Abzan. We certainly have the lands to support the splash in blue if we're Abzan. But otherwise, we didn't get really lucky with our Abzan colored fixing, only 2 of them. But 2 is better than nothing, I guess. So let's try and build an Abzan deck here and go from there. So I'll see you in a bit. Alright, welcome back. So I've made a nice Abzan deck here with a pretty heavy Toughness Matters theme. We have a Rotting Mastodon and cards like Bellowing Saddlebrute, Kurmag Angler and Sidisi Spat that go nicely with the Grim contest. So we have a pretty decent ground defense, a lot of removal as you can see. Injury, Killshot, Sandblast, Contest, Smite the Monstrous, Death Frenzy for a nice little sweeper, a Reach of Shadows, and then Channel Harm and Doomblast. So this deck has a lot of removal. And then the win conditions, the finishers, are Archfiend of Depravity. Then a Swarm of Bloodflies is actually pretty nice with all the removal we have, as it can easily grow very big very quickly. And then we can win a long game with cards like Salt Road Patrol. The Dragon Bell Monk with Vigilance and Prowess works nicely in this deck. Since we have so many instant speed removal spells, we can keep him on defense. If the opponent attacks, we can take out a creature and maybe ambush another one. Hooded Assassin also works nicely with cards like Sidisi Spat, a 1/4 lifelinker. If they block it with, let's say, a 3/3, then you can play the Hooded Assassin and kill that creature. So overall, I like this deck. It doesn't have that many bomb rares. We're just playing Archfiend and Doomblast, and I guess Empty the Pits, so we can't really complain. But if the opponent has an answer for the Archfiend, I mean, our creatures aren't that great, so we sort of have to hope that our less awesome creatures can still get there. But we do have cards that can certainly win games out of nowhere, like Empty the Pits. If you can delve this for a bunch, then you can certainly surprise an opponent. Channel Harm and Doomblast are also excellent examples of cards that can win games out of nowhere. So I certainly like this deck. We have as fixing just 2 basically white-black lands, and white and black are our main colors. We're only splashing green for Grim Contest, Death Frenzy and Doomblast, which is pretty conservative. The Abzan banner also helps us cast our more expensive spells. And yeah, cards I ended up cutting. Rakshasa Secret. I think it's a little too slow. We could side it in against those slow grindy decks, but I think our deck is pretty weak to early aggression. So it's nice to not have a Rakshasa secret in hand if you're playing against an aggressive deck. And then the spies I also ended up cutting because I think we have enough removal that we have enough ways to deal with creatures once they resolve. So we would rather have the opponent spend some mana to cast those creatures rather than take them out of their hand. Unyielding Krumar wasn't very exciting. And then in green, Hunter Weak I guess could make it. So yeah, if you need even more removal, then I guess Hunter Weak can make it. But the thing is, we don't have a ton of creatures. So I think if the opponent then kills your creature in response or does something with it, then you're gonna be pretty sad. And I think we have enough removal as is. But if you need even more, then I guess Hunter Weak can also be a decent card. Awaken the Bear doesn't seem that good if you're not really planning to use it offensively that much. Smoke Teller, we don't need more 2-drops, I think. So yeah, nothing that exciting. And I want to keep the green splash for the late game so we don't have to commit a lot of lands to playing forests. So playing something like a Yasova or a Frontier Mastodon isn't that good if you can only cast it on turn 6. So that's why I didn't play that many green cards here. I did consider maybe playing some blue cards since we have a lot of blue fixing if we want to go the blue route. But I don't think there's many cards that we wanna splash. And as I've said earlier, most of the very good ones are double blue, so those are not very good if you're trying to splash them. So yeah, I think this is certainly the first deck I would build and probably the deck I would end up playing. But just to make sure, let's take a look at a Temur deck and maybe another one after. But yeah, let's see in a bit. Alright, welcome back. So this is the Temur build that isn't very good. I'll just be honest here. We are trying to be aggressive. We have a bunch of evasive creatures, a bunch of flyers, but we don't have a lot of 2-drops. So that's not very good if you're trying to beat down. Then we have this Embodiment of Spring to fix our mana, but there's not really much worth splashing in red. We just have the Snowhorn Rider with Morph and the Goblin Heel Cutter, that's pretty decent. But otherwise there just isn't anything very good in red. I guess we could play a Trumpet Blast or a Act of Treason just to randomly kill someone. But that doesn't seem a very good plan. Some of our creatures just aren't very good. A Battlefront Khrushchev I would not be very happy to play with. Skuldkin is not really my first choice. So yeah, I'm also forced to play cards like Temur Runemark, which I would otherwise avoid. Return to Earth, which is more of a sideboard card, but since we don't have a lot of playables. I would rather have a card with possibly a very high upside, because killing a flyer can be very good if you're trying to kill them with your own flying creatures. But yeah, so this deck, not really that good. It can certainly steal games with cards like Yesova and cards like Cloudform if you randomly reveal a big creature underneath and maybe enchant it with a Temur rune mark afterwards. So the deck certainly can win games, but I don't think this deck is very good. And I think the Abzan deck we looked at earlier is certainly a lot better. We do have these 4 cards to maybe help us splash a white card, but there aren't really white cards I would want to splash. The only one that comes to mind is Channel Harm, which can randomly win a game out of nowhere, but I think the downside of having lands that come into play tapped isn't really worth running Channel Harm for. So I did not go for a white splash here. So yeah, I don't think there's much else to say about this deck, other than it's not very good. It does have Ice Feather Aven and Snowhorn Rider, which are good Temur cards, but otherwise, yeah, I would stay away from this. And I think there aren't very many other color combinations I would look at, because we don't have many multicolor cards other than the ones in Temur and in Abzan. So there's really no incentive to play other colors. And overall, I think our pool was pretty weak, other than the June Blast and the Empty the Pits. So I think our Abzan deck is actually pretty decent given the pool we opened, and I would be pretty happy playing it, as it also seems a fun deck to play with all the removal. So yeah, I think that's gonna do it for this sealed deck building exercise. I wanna thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.